Okay, so I finally got around to putting the questlog.gg together for people. I want to preface this by saying it works towards my ranged and magic evasion build. I'm not saying by any means that this is the best build in the world. There are variations on all builds, and depending on who you fight should dictate your gear and what you're looking to achieve. For us, we were predominantly diving backline, which meant that we were faced with a lot of staff bow, bow dagger, and classes that we really needed the magic and ranged evasion from. We weren't expecting to come up against many great swords at all. That has changed, and people that we're fighting against are now stationing great swords in their backlines to prevent what we were achieving, which was big flanks into the healing and the DPS at the back, allowing us to effectively cut off their damage. So this build works towards that. In tier 2 there will be massive shifts in gearing, and I'll do a build guide once tier 2's out and things are a little bit more settled. But this build also takes into account the fact that items are now more readily available than they were for us at release. So a lot of these items weren't within a build for me originally, and they weren't items that I used, but this is all based on if I was to level another character now, which I will be doing shortly, this is the Dagger 1 setup that I would look at running. So when you load up this .gg, it'll be in the description for you. It basically takes you from blues all the way through to the T1 build with Tevant that I'm intending on using, and also has a variation with the Harvester 2-piece set for the critical damage increase. But essentially what we're looking to achieve is the same throughout the whole process. We want to get to 70 perception when we can, while maintaining the extra health from this 30 strength, and then dumping anything else into wisdom. There is an argument for dexterity for the extra crit and evasion, but ultimately it's such a small amount of points that you're going to be putting in there that you're not going to get a huge amount of benefit. So I won't go through each individual piece of gear. There is a description on here that goes through how I would progress and what I would look to do. So have a look at this, have a read through it, leave any comments that you want to leave. Um, Definitely taking on board all the feedback, so feel free to leave any comments there or on the video. But some highlights of this build are things like the Daggers of Slaughtering, purely because of the stat allocation of 11 strength. And then we've got Wander Skyward Blessing for the 8 perception. So everything here is based around getting stat points where we can. Things like the Duskblood Mask for the 5 perception, but also things that we're going to be able to trait into that ranged evasion and magic evasion. The chest piece you get at the end of leveling. If you have already chosen your chest and it's a different chest, it's not an issue at all. If you've got magic and ranged evasion on it, great. If you don't, you can look at picking this up and transferring across. But again, all of these items are interchangeable. You don't need to commit to a single build. TL is all about doing the best you can with what you have and flex into the items that you get lucky enough to have. And this is what's going to happen in tier 2 as well. You're going to find that things don't always go to plan. So things like the Ruthless Enforcer's legs, strength again on these, Feather Drake Skin Gloves for the perception. We choose a green bracelet here because of the ranged evasion we can resist. It's easy to trade, it'll cost you next to nothing, but ultimately there aren't any really good blues, so you'll just use this until you upgrade the gear. Max health, this dexterity ring is just too good not to use. I mean, if you're leveling a fresh character, you could probably lithograph it or sell the trait if you get a good one, depending on the price. And then these Imperial rings should be all over the place. Yes, we don't benefit from stun resist or collision for stun chance or collision chance, but ultimately it's another 3 strength that's allowing us to get to this breakpoint. So the start of the build's really simple. I don't consider blues to be a big deal, but you should always make sure that you max trait the blues. It doesn't matter whether you want to do it through getting undesirable traits on these and doing it the cheap way with Lucent to progress into epics quicker, as long as you max trait it so that you have Blessing. You want Blessing going into epics just to make it a little bit cheaper. You're not going to be stacked on Blessings on these items, but it is going to help to make things a little bit cheaper when it comes to the more expensive pieces. So the first transition for this would be to pick up the bracelet and the 2 weapons. The reason I've put the bracelet in here is because if you decide to farm cave specifically, your chances are you're going to pick up this anyway. But it's a 5 perception bracelet and it allows getting your perception that little bit higher initially. There's still points in wisdom. You could drop these right the way down, but the problem is you're not going to get to 70, and it's not worth it for the increased cost of those stats. What I've put in the description here though is that you realistically should only be farming random dungeons from now on. There's no reason to target farm these for the, I think it's about 2 or 3% drop chance. And the reason being is that the Dimensional Essence of Salvation, you need 2 of these to craft the weapon. You either do that through 10 of each seal, each dungeon seal, to make the essence, so you'd need 20 of each dungeon, or you can get lucky at a 7% drop chance and get a full dimensional essence from the box. So because of this, you can craft the weapon with 2 dimensional essences. There is no point in target farming these. You're better off just doing random dungeons and trying to get a nice spread of seals, because you'll need them later on anyway for trait unlock stones and also for your ring. But the 2 weapons are going to be the big thing to pick up straight off the bat. These are going to be the single biggest increase to your damage output, and Laquarius Tomb is going to give you the best chance of survival as well, especially on lower gear levels. From there, the easiest to farm pieces are the Heroic Hood of the Resistance and Heroic Trousers of the Resistance. You can get these from doing level 50 events and also from doing world bosses, and the way you acquire them is through medals that you then craft the items from. So you need 40 medals per item, and then you can craft these. I would craft the Hood of the Resistance first, because if you're doing your Sorodoma contracts, which you should be doing anyway, there is a chance that you'll drop the Phantom Wolf breeches, and these are a really good replacement for these legs, and they're what I use in my build at the moment. And what they will do is shift the ranged evasion to magic evasion, so you'll be higher on ranged evasion than you will be on magic evasion. But these 2 pieces are big pieces to pick up after you've got your weapons sorted. The next step would be grabbing your accessories, so your Etched Alabaster band and the Clasp of the Conqueror. Now, these can be crafted with 40 Abyss currency. You get 1 Abyss currency per weekly scroll, and that's for Shadow Crypt, Sanctum, Sorodoma, and Silius. So as long as you're doing them consistently, you will end up being able to craft these. And that's why these are going to make the easiest ones to pick up. But also, if you go down the Heroic Trousers Resistance route, you don't need to farm Sorodoma outside of your weekly contracts. So what I would do is, instead of going out there and farming the island, I would mob tag other people's mobs to get your quest completed, and then use your Abyss points to farm Silius 5th floor and 6th floor. In particular, I think it's the trackers that you need to farm, and the trackers have a chance at dropping the ring itself, and that's obviously going to save you 40 seals if you get it, and then you can use those seals to potentially make Lucent instead, or Abyss contract currency. It's not seals, but you can use that to make money. And this should be a focus all the way through. You should be selling as much as you can so that you can reinvest your Lucent into your traits. I wouldn't outright buy any of these items because they are farmable, but I would definitely be looking to make as much Lucent as you can so that you can invest into your traits. Although the prices of things have come down a lot in terms of how much you will get for selling items, so has the cost of buying items. So Lucent still goes just as far, if not further, now than it ever did. On to stage 4, and the last things that I would look to be doing is picking up Belt of Endless Slaughter and Ancient Tapestry Mantle. Now, the Tapestry Mantle drops from Shadow Crypt's Enforcers, so where possible, re-roll your weekly contracts to make sure they include Enforcers, and then if you've already got these items and you're not farming Silius, you could always do this. You can also craft this for 40 of the Abyss currency, but these 2 items are arguably better to craft first. This is a defensive item though, so if you are struggling, it might be worth grabbing this. It's definitely a big pickup for the build as a whole. The belt is interchangeable. You can use Belt of the Endless Slaughter. Ideally, you would want Belt of Bloodlust, and that's what you're going to work to eventually. But there is also the Flamewrought Bindings that are another option, and there is the Flamewrought Bindings is the other option, I think, that is cheap and easy to pick up. And if you can pick that one up, then you're going to be in a good spot. But this is one of the better belts, and hopefully you'll get a drop while you're doing your random dungeons from Butcher's Canyon anyway. This then takes you up to the last step, which is finishing off the build, and what we're looking to do between this final step and this one is the most expensive piece of your gear will be your Dimensional Band. Prices are massively dropping on this because of how easy it is to farm essences. So I wouldn't look to rush this. It's going to be a nice pickup, but you're not going to need to get this and trait this for a while. And by the time you get around to trading it, it should be really, really cheap. Then from there we've got Grips of the Executioner. These are readily available on the marketplace and should be one of your cheaper items to trait. The problem might be the added attack speed, but as long as you get the magic evasion and ranged evasion traits maxed, you can do the attack speed as and when you can. At this point in time, you will be at the level of build I'm currently playing, and you can run the 70 Perception, 30 Strength, 43 Wisdom. Once you've got all of this sorted, the only real progression is to pick up Tevant Wand. Once you get Tevant Wand, you can still run the same stat breakpoint. You will probably need to pick up Belt of Bloodlust at that point to smooth out the build. There is also the option of replacing this with Band of Universal Power and then reshifting your stats, but this ring isn't that great for us as a whole. It will come into play later on into builds, but it's not a massive deal at the moment. I have included another build in here that has the Shadow Harvester gloves and the Shadow Harvester boots. This will give us access to the added 14% critical damage, which is a big pickup if we can get it, but the boots drop from Tevant, and it's unrealistic that unless you're in one of the top guilds that you will get this, but also these boots are massively going to your other DPS instead. So getting a pair of these is going to be really hard to do, and by the time you are likely in line to pick these up, tier 2 is likely coming around. And as of this build, the only piece that really adds any benefit is the boots on their own. So you could run the boots with the Executioner's Grip if you get them, but again, this is the hardest piece you're going to have to acquire, so I don't see that happening. And I've got the Phantom Wolf breeches in this final build because these are what I run at the moment. But obviously the difference is that on this build, for you guys, I've gone with what's going to be readily farmable, which is the heroic trousers. Sorry, I know it's a bit of a long video and a bit ranty, but I want to just finish off by giving you a rundown on the stats. So even from blue level, we have our evasions at a reasonable level. So after dodge roll, you're at 1800 ranged evasion and 1400 magic evasion. But importantly, your magic hit chance is up at 820 at the very start. The transition takes you through in such a route that you do drop evasion initially, but what happens is you don't drop your offensive hit rating stats, so you are still going to be as viable in terms of damage and getting those sleeps off. And by the time you get to transition step 2, your evasion is already picked up, and then from there you're going to progress through, and it's going to continue to grow until you get towards the final level of the build. I've included the skills that I run in terms of my build. If we pop this on, actually it'll show you the real evasion numbers. But this is the build that I'm running at the moment, minus the Tevant. Mine shifts, as you can see, to magic evasion from ranged evasion, whereas if you're running the trousers, you have a different shift where you run more ranged evasion than magic evasion. Everyone's been asking for this, so I just wanted to throw together a quick video in a little bit of a rush, but any questions, like I said, leave a comment, drop it in the comment section on YouTube. I'll get back to everybody. I've been trying to stay on top of comments as much as I can, and then hopefully I'll be streaming again soon as well. Thanks.